We agree on so many things. I just want to let everybody know, in case there was any doubt, that we are very much behind President el-Sisi. He's done a fantastic job in a very difficult situation. We are very much behind Egypt and the people of Egypt. And the United States has, believe me, backing, and we have strong backing. We are very much, and as you and I will be soon talking, we are building up our military to a level that will be the highest, probably the highest that we've ever had. Plane orders, ship orders, aircraft carrier orders. We are rejuvenating our military to the highest level. I think in these times, probably more than ever before, or certainly almost more than ever before. That's what we need. And I just want to say to you, Mr. President, that you have a great friend and ally in the United States and in me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Fired from a North Korean submarine, a frightening capability that Kim Jong-un is racing to perfect. Tonight, the U.S. Navy and its allies are practicing tracking North Korean subs. It's the kind of show of force that makes Kim Jong-un furious. President Trump is well aware of the growing threat, telling the Financial Times, quote, "If China is not going to solve North Korea, we will." The White House offering no new details on what actions the U.S. would take on its own. So far, waiting for China to pressure North Korea into curbing its nuclear program hasn't worked.
The North Koreans have gotten pretty good at acting like the crazy drunk neighbor with a submachine gun at the end of the block, and the Chinese don't want any trouble. And when the Chinese push them a bit, they start throwing bottles out the window and shooting guns into the air, and usually Beijing backs off.
What are the president's options for going it alone? One is to speak directly with Kim Jong-un.
Who knows? There's a 10% or a 20% chance that I can talk him out of those damn nukes.
President Trump floated the idea at least 3 times on the campaign trail.
I just don't see how it happens. And the bottom line is that North Korea will not give up its nuclear programs and its missile programs. What Kim Jong-un wants is for the president to at least implicitly acknowledge that North Korea is a nuclear weapon state, a fellow nuclear weapon state.
Another option? Put more financial pressure on North Korea by aggressively going after Chinese banks and companies that help prop up Kim's regime.
The president is going to be reluctant to do that for fear of retaliation, but he could still choose to do that. The Chinese companies more than likely would cut off their business with North Korea, but the retaliation could really hurt the United States as well.
That leaves the most daunting option, a preemptive military strike. General Walter Sharp, who commanded U.S. and allied forces in South Korea, says that should be an option if the threat is imminent. But with more than 28,000 U.S. troops near the DMZ and the South Korean capital only about 30 miles from the border, the blowback could be devastating.
They could inflict a lot of damage on Seoul because of all the artillery that is within the range of Seoul. The number of missiles that they have that they could launch into South Korea, they could cause a lot of damage.
The White House is all but calling on Senate Republicans to bring it on when it comes to triggering the filibuster-ending nuclear option to stop Democratic efforts to block Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch.
Democrats are setting a very dangerous precedent when it comes to how they want to do this. It is literally trying to stop using the filibuster for something that it was never intended for, nor has it ever really been the principle that we would vote down somebody who is qualified.
Democrats appear to reach the 41-vote threshold needed to filibuster Gorsuch.
I cannot support this nomination.
Leading Republicans to warn they may have no choice but to pursue a maneuver that may damage the Senate's ability to handle Supreme Court nominees for years.
Hamilton is rolling over in his grave. I'm sorry.
A small flock is returned for Mass in the charred ruins of the Church of Mary the Immaculate in Karakosh, near Mosul. ISIS set fire to the church and used its courtyard as a firing range. Yaqub Hanna came home to Karakosh a week ago and has yet to recover from the shock. I felt pain, he recalls, my eyes filled with tears. Silvana is back just for Mass and says this is the first time I returned to this church, and then she's at a loss for words. Archbishop Johanna Boutros Moshe has struggled to help residents through the trauma, but worries the specter of ISIS still hovers nearby. We expected everything in Karakosh, theft, damage, and destruction, he tells me. But arson, for us, is a message, a threatening message, that the idea of ISIS is still here in the region, and that's what we fear. Today, this once prosperous Christian community is a ghost town of empty streets, blown-out buildings, gutted shops. Everywhere reminders of ISIS's hatred for everything Karakush stood for. Workers have erected a large cross at one of the main roundabouts to signal the town's liberation, but it's just a symbol. Before ISIS took over this town in the summer of 2014, more than 60,000 people called it home. Now, months after it was liberated, only a handful of families has returned. Without electricity and running water, without help to get life moving again, most residents are hesitant to return. Businessman Tawfiq Sakar moved back 2 months ago. A generator running nearby, he shows a list of everything ISIS looted from his businesses. The central government, he says, hasn't restored power or water. It's completely neglecting the Christians. Some residents have returned, briefly, to bury the dead. Friends and relatives bid final farewell to 83-year-old Nasira, a nun who fled Karakosh and died in Erbil. She, at least, has returned in death to the town of her birth. Ben Wiedemann, CNN, Karakosh, northern Iraq.
More than a seat at the table, Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner seems to be at the head of nearly every table at the White House, from streamlining the government to solving peace in the Middle East. President Trump told one newspaper, Jared is such a good kid, and he'll make a deal with Israel that no one else can. Tonight, Kushner is in Iraq, invited by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to see the situation firsthand and get an update on the fight against ISIS, prompting this bewildered tweet from former Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes. Kushner in Iraq before the National Security Advisor or Secretary of State. Totally normal. But it's not just Iraq. Kushner has been designated the president's point person on a list of issues, including trade deals, communicating with China, heading up the new Office of American Innovation, which includes updating the entire government's technology infrastructure and tackling the opioid crisis.
And he's very good at politics.
He's held important meetings with foreign leaders, even when Secretary of State Rex Tillerson was noticeably absent. Today, the White House was asked how exactly he can do all of this.
There's a lot of relationships that Jared's made over time with different leaders, Mexico being one of them you mentioned, that are going to continue to have conversations with him and help facilitate. That doesn't mean by any means that it's being done without coordination with the State Department. Quite in fact, the opposite.
No question, it's taking time for the State Department to get up to speed, still understaffed at the senior level. So is Jared Kushner, who sources say has won the president's confidence by projecting a lot of confidence, even when he doesn't have the experience or knowledge, the de facto Secretary of State? To many, it has appeared that way, and appearances affect influence, to the point that some diplomats, like the Chinese ambassador, have been dealing directly with him. Sources say it's also worked well for Middle Eastern delegations, like the Saudis. For them, government is a family affair. Kushner also was at the center of negotiations to get the president and Mexico to the table in D.C., which then collapsed after Trump's executive order on immigration, as well as some presidential tweets. Some European ambassadors, though, have expressed outrage to CNN that a son-in-law has been given such a big role, one saying this would never fly in Europe.
And the larger question is, up until now, we haven't seen a lot of regular order in this administration when it comes to making foreign policy. It's supposed to be centered around the National Security Council. They debate the policy, they decide the policy, they speak the policy. That doesn't seem to be happening. There's a lot of freelancing going on.
Tonight, as Kushner works in Iraq and prepares for the president's high-stakes meeting with Chinese President Xi on Thursday, the man with zero diplomatic, government, or foreign policy experience may now be the most high-profile member of the administration doing just that. Why and how are the lingering questions outside the White House and around the world.
Я увидел, я его снимал, может, несколько минут отмотать назад. Камеру берите. Не мешайте работу, пожалуйста. Что вы это делаете? Вам никак не мешало.
Он меня вдарил за что? Предатели России! Предатели России!
سخنرانی‌های هفته‌های اخیرش تند و آتشین بود، اما وقتی به شهر آبا و اجدادیش رفت، این سخنرانی‌ها تندتر و احساسی‌تر شد، جایی که هزاران نفر از به قول معروف همشهری‌هایش در انتظار ورود او بودند. سخنرانی دیروز آقای اردوغان در شهر پدری خود یعنی ریزه حاوی چند نکته اساسی بود. نخست که او وعده عملیاتی جدید را در سوریه داد. او همچنین طرفداران گلن، PKK، YPG و داعش را در سوریه جملگی در یک کفه ترازو قرار داد و گفت شمایی که با فرارسیدن بهار منتظر عملیات‌های جدید تروریستی بودید را شوکه خواهیم کرد. این بدان معناست که ترکیه با شدت بیشتری با مخالفان در داخل و خارج به تقابل در خواهد آمد. و البته مطابق معمول این روزها تازشی تند هم بر اردوگاه غرب داشت. اروپاییان را فاشیست و نادان خواند و گفت آنها در پی خدشه‌دار کردن غرور ملی ترکیه هستند. مخالفان داخلی هم البته بی‌نصیب از سخنانش نماندند. اردوغان خطاب به آنها گفت این خائنان عقل و دین و ناموسشان را به بهای $1 به پس فطرتی چون گلن فروختند. این سخنان در میان فریادها و هیاهوهای طرفدارانش در شهر ریزه با این سبک و سیاق البته تیتر روزنامه‌ها در این کشور است. خبرترک در همین ارتباط می‌نویسد حرکت‌های جدیدی انجام می‌شود. یعنی شفق می‌نویسد در بهار برای تروریست‌ها سورپرایز داریم. بینالی ییلدیریم هم روز گذشته اروپاییان را متهم به دخالت در رفراندوم ترکیه کرد و گفت روزنامه‌های اروپا با تیتر نه منتشر می‌شوند. اما یک خبر که البته تا حدود زیادی متفاوت‌تر از این اخبار است اینکه روزنامه حریت می‌نویسد نام کوه آکیل در شهر الباب سوریه به نام کوه شهید بلند البیراق سرباز کشته شده ترک تغییر می‌کند. حریت همچنین خبر می‌دهد که در استانبول بزرگترین بیمارستان جهان با سرمایه 1.6 میلیارد دلار ساخته می‌شود. اما روز گذشته نخست وزیر ترکیه در دیدار با ارشاد صالحی رئیس جبهه ترکمن‌های عراق گفت در این دوره حساس ترکیه در کنار همتباران خود خواهد ایستاد. ییلدیریم با انتقاد از تلاش برای همه‌پرسی استقلال در کرکوک عراق آن را زیاده خواهی دانست و به گفته او این حرکت حقوق دیگر گروه‌های قومی را نادیده می‌گیرد. روزنامه حریت هم در این رابطه می‌نویسد واکنش تند ایران و ترکیه نسبت به برافراشته شدن پرچم اقلیم کردستان در کرکوک. ییلدیریم به ارشاد صالحی وعده داد که ترکیه در برابر این گونه تحرکات قاطعانه در کنار ترکمن‌های عراق خواهد ایستاد. و اما طرفداران دولت حضور پررنگی در خیابان‌های شهر دارند. با ایجاد جایگاه‌های اختصاصی و با توزیع برگه‌های تبلیغاتی تلاش دارند مردم را به آری گفتن در رفراندوم تشویق کنند. در ویدئویی که خواهید دید اما شهروندی از چند تن از مسئولان این جایگاه‌ها می‌پرسد چطور دیگر احزاب و کمپین نه به رفراندوم به اندازه شما آزادی برپایی جایگاه‌های اینچنینی را ندارد، اما شما اینگونه آزادانه در هر نقطه می‌توانید فعالیت کنید، که البته با پاسخ روشنی روبرو نمی‌شود.
Hocam siz avukat mısınız? Evet. Peki hayır çalışması yapan başka kurumlara yasak getiriliyor. Siz evet çalışmasını nasıl serbest yapabiliyorsunuz? Bazı partiler dışında hayır evet çalışması yasaklandı ve hayır çalışması yapanlara röportaj izin verilmiyor. Siz nasıl serbestçe bu evet çalışmasını yapıyorsunuz? O zaman size soralım. Hayır çalışması yapan herkese müdahale ediliyor. Bazı partilerin hakkı vardır deniyor. Siz bu evet çalışmasını nasıl serbestçe yapabiliyorsunuz? Hayır çalışmasını serbestçe yapamıyorlar. Buraya gelip bildiri dağıttığında insanlar gözaltına alınıyorlar.